Hello everyone, my name is Teddy Bear and welcome back to another video. For today's video, I'll be showing you the patch note comparison of version 27.3 versus 28.0 of Bloons Tower Defense 6. I know I'm a bit late on this, but let's just go into full details on the patch notes, shall we? Let's go. The first change here is that now the Dart Monkey, Monkey Buccaneer, Sniper Monkey, Super Monkey, Ninja Monkey, and the Wizard Monkey, if they've been given camo, well for the Ninja it's the base tower, they will now have a new camo prioritization filter toggle, where there's a button on the right next to the tower's, screen art, whether you call it. It will make the tower target specifically camo balloons without changing the base tower's targeting. And I think you can also change its targeting towards camos. As you see, I changed the targeting on the Dart Monkey while it's prioritizing the camo balloons. The next change here is that, I don't know if most of you know this, as much as you people play Bloons Tower Defense 6, but I don't know if you know about Bionic Boomerang does a little bit more damage towards mob class balloons. But it's not really impactful in 27.0, as you can see it couldn't take out the mob here. So in 28.0 they increased it by 50%, so instead of doing 2 layers of damage towards mobs, it now does 3 layers of damage towards mobs. And it will do 4 if it's crosspath with red hot ranks per shot. This is a crosspath buff, which means only one of the 2 crosspaths only got buffed, and the one that got buffed is red hot ranks. In 27.0 it only did 8 layers per damage for permacharge to do on the bad. In 28.0, it would now do 10 layers of damage per shot instead of 8, which means it got further as 26,000 pops instead of 23,000 pops on the bad, which is quite a lot of damage, which is good because, yeah, bomb path is meant for its single target damage, while top path is meant for its group damage. Unlike the previous change, this is the base tower buff, which means both cross paths get buffed and the base tower. So the change in what they did with Mob Dom is its main attack, not the mob press attack where it explodes. The main attack where it's attacking the bad if it's in range will now do additional plus 5 layers of damage towards mob class balloons. Before it was 20, now they increase it to 25. And it's a very small change. It's just so Mob Dom's a little bit better for single targets, but I don't think it's like really that much of a buff. It's just it's good, I guess. But I wish it kind of got a price buff, because I feel like Mob Dom's a little bit expensive from the times I've been playing, well, chimps with the tower, and it just felt a little expensive, and I feel like a price buff will be a little bit more better than a damage buff. A damage buff is fine, but it already does like decent amount of damage. I just feel like it's just a little expensive, that's all. Next up is our first Paragon buff, which means the 555 tower that first got buffed is the Mob Dominic, the 555 Boomerang. So the buffs it got is it's burning a DOT damage from its Mob Dom attack, its Mob Press attack where it explodes. As you can see, the first bad is on fire. Now it does 100 damage per tick instead of 50. The Shred DOT, which is the main attack, as you can see when the main attack is attacking the bad, with the small toenail particles, now it does 750 damage instead of 250 damage per DOT, which is 3 times more damage, while the burning effect is twice the amount of damage. And the last one is the rotating glaives, the one that goes around the boomerang. Now it does 42 damage per, hit instead of 20, which means it's slightly more than twice the amount of damage. The 27.3 run, Mob Dominic died to the first 4 or 5 bad because it didn't do enough damage to it. Now in 28.0, as I'm showing you, the 4 or 5 bad now breaks halfway through the track. But somehow I died to the 4 or 5 DTs in this test run, but I did a longer run of this before, and it did take out the full round, so it was just a bit of RNG to be honest. And yeah, Mob Dom can now survive much longer. Small quality of life change, the base bomb tower is now $75 cheaper. Before it was $600, now it's $525. Same price as Sprockets, the tier 3 top half engineer upgrade. But into our first nerf, Mob Mauler is now $200 expensive than before. But since the base bomb tower is $75 cheaper, it's only about $125 more than before. But even then, it's still a price nerf regardless. Next up is another buff, however, to the bomb tower, and this is a very underutilized upgrade which is called Frag Bombs. It's very lackluster on its black popping power and extra popping power, so Digikui decided to give it black popping power. Since the base bomb tower can't pop black balloons at all, so they decided to give this very underused upgrade something that bomb towers could ever dream of, which is able to pop black balloons. And you know what's crazy about it? It can now give cluster bombs and recursive cluster black popping power, and it's completely broken. It's because they're meant to be their group damage and not supposed to solo on their own, so they might patch it out next update. Okay, so the upgrade Metal Freeze, the tier 2 top half after Permafrost, as you can see on the screen, now got renamed to called Cold Snap, and they also give it camo detection, so your ice tower can now pop camo as well to cross path, not just for top path. But they did price nerf it just so it's not too much of a useful upgrade, so it's $350 instead of $300 before, and the upgrade below, such as large radius, is now $75 more expensive, making bomb path ice a little bit more as well. That's not all. Refreeze got a $25 price nerf, nothing much else to say, and Cryo Cannon got a $200 price nerf, went from $1,750 as an upgrade to $1,950 as an upgrade. So it's overall $300 more than it was before last update. Next up is a pretty big buff for this particular ice upgrade, and it's the Embrittlement tier 4 top half ice. It can now debuff mob class balloons, only debuffing them by 1 layer. And to prevent it from being too broken, it cannot slow down mob class balloons at all, but it only can debuff them by 1 layer, while Super Bill debuffs it by 4 layers and remains the same as before. And yeah, it's a really big change because, well, for single layer fast damaging towers like Taxstone and Stone Avatar would benefit a lot from it, just from a very cheap upgrade alone. It can also decamo DTs as well. Next up is Supply Drop. So a lot of the money generating abilities will now have a 3-minute timeout, which includes Supply Drop, Elite Sniper, Jungle's Bounty, and Monkeyonomics. And also I think I'm a Fallen as well, since you get money from it as well. And then the other thing it got is its ability cooldown has been decreased from 60 seconds to 90 seconds, so it's about 50% longer with its cooldown, but instead of having a randomizing money generator between $500 and $1,000, it will now give you a flat $1,200 every single ability use. Unlike the Shrapnel Shot upgrade, Bouncer Bullets will no longer receive any external buffs to the number of bouncers. Yeah, I just read it from the screen. Just to prevent Millpath Sniper from being too good with alch buffs. We're not done with the snipers. Next up is Elite Defender with Shrapnel Shot, or just Shrapnel Shot in general. Shrapnel Shot can now benefit from buffs like Pierce and damage buffs now, not just only attack speed buffs, because before it didn't even work, but now it does work. So as you can see in 27.0, Elite Defender's full potential with Permabrew isn't really that great, but in 28.0 soon it will come up. Elite Defender will now shred this round by doing twice the amount of damage with Shrapnel, because it's getting Permabrewed, because Permabrewed now gives 1 layer extra damage, and Mixture Chip also gives it another 1 layer extra damage, making it do 3 times more damage towards mobs and ceramics, only twice the amount towards noble balloons, and extra pierce, like about +3. This is a really good quality of life change, just so 025 Elite Defender does a little bit more than just be a deflation mode tower. But I'll tell you what actually happened for it in deflation in this current update. Unfortunately, it's a nerf. The nerf is, which is quite drastic, is that Full Auto Rifle and Elite Defender no longer pop lead balloons in 28.0. In 27.0, Full Auto Rifle can at least damage the lead balloons and DDTs, but in 28.0, when it comes up, you are not able to pop lead balloons until you cross-path it with Full Metal Jacket, which means you lose shrapnel with it. And as you can see, can't pop lead. An upgrade to Elite Defender, just camo, doesn't damage, and then with full metal jacket, it can now damage it. And then an additional buff to full auto rifle, which is now $500 cheaper, which I don't think it's enough to save it from not able to pop lead balloons. On the other hand, the inferior crosspath for Monkey Buccaneer long range upgrade, which no one really uses because Monkey Buccaneer already has enough range in general, now does additional +1 Pierce in 28.0, which is one of the buffs I feel like it should have had, but I wish it was +2 Pierce, not +1. Because +1 Pierce versus double damage for Grapes is not going to really save Pirate Lord or basically benefit Top Path at all. But hey, at least it's better than before, but I still wish it was a little bit more effective than it is right now. This is an interesting change. So in 27.0 and beyond, favorite traits you could use to able to stack them up to 3 for more sellback, and to be surprised, this was Nichikui's unintentional decision. What it was meant to be is for one favorite trait to sell back, not stack with the other favorite traits. Even though they gave a description where they do stack, but now they reconvert it to what they intentionally want to have, which is where it only sells back. You only get one favorite trait to sell back. So as you can see in 28.0, favorite trades has much less sellback, and the Elite Defender that's in range. Even though it's slightly cheaper, as you can see with 4 favorite trades or 3, Elite Defender is no longer over $20,000 in sellback. Next up, Monkey 8's got a lot of changes and some reworks. So first off, Fireplane got an additional buff. So Fireplane can now hit up to 4 mob class balloons per missile instead of 3. As you can see, it popped 3 mobs and left 1 behind, with 4 on top of each other. Now in 28.0, there's 4 on top of each other, while the previous test was 27.0. So a good buff for Fireplane. The Exploding Pineapples upgrade can now enhance Fireplane's missiles by making the explosions bigger, and makes its PS go from 4 to 6, same goes with ODS, and Exploding Pineapples can affect Sky Shredder's Fireplane missiles PS going from 5 to 7 per explosion. Next up is Spectre that got a massive rework. It now is quite decent towards late game now. So first off, Spectre now does twice the amount of damage, or almost twice the amount of damage towards ceramics now, because it sucks once round 80 comes in. As you can see in round 82, it sucks against mobs and ceramics. Since it is really good for mid-game, but it really sucks when round 81 hits in. And it's priced as a late-game tower, and I don't know why. So the buff they gave to it is that the Spectre darts now do 4 layers of damage towards ceramics instead of 2, and the Spectre bombs will now do 5 layers of damage towards ceramics instead of 3. But at the same time, they halved Spectre's Pierce from 30 PS per dart to 15 PS per dart, which is still a lot of PS. 15 is still a lot, still more than Crossmasters and Tech Terrors. And the Spectre Bomb's PS has been halved as well, went from 60 PS per explosion to 30 PS, which makes sense because the explosions are really tiny, so it makes sense why it's 30. And yeah, it's a pretty good change overall for Spectre. Exploding Pineapples can now be crosspath with Spectre by giving Spectre's bombs PS goes up to 45 instead of 30. It's not 60, but it's half the increase. And also makes Spectre's bomb blast radius slightly bigger, just so it can hit more balloons, so it's more like the bombs are a little bit more effective. My thoughts on this is that I like the idea where Exploding Pineapples enhances Fireplane's missile explosion and Spectre's bomb explosion attack a little bit, but I feel like it should be a little bit more effective for Spectre because, well, it's still the same single target damage as the base tower, so it'd be nice if it increases the damage as well. Next up is Supply Drop. Cash generation abilities now have a 3-minute timeout, just like Jungle's Bounty and Supply Drop, nothing special about it. But here's an interesting change. Support Chinook's Supply Drop now drops life and cash crates together. Instead of being a life crate as the first ability use and a cash crate on the second ability use, you get both in one ability use, but exchanged for having a 90-second cooldown instead of a 60-second cooldown, as you can see in the background. And obviously, the gameplay in the background is in 2x speed, so I don't want to bore you people with the actual ability cooldown. And just like the supply drop upgrade, the support Chinook cash has been increased from $1,000 to $2,000 to a flat $1,800. They also changed the life count from 50 to 75 lives to a flat 10 per ability use. Meanwhile, Special Preparation has been increased to $4,500 per ability, and it generates 25 lives instead of 10 per ability use. The next and last change to the heli pilot is Mob Shove and Comanche defense. So first off, Mob Shove will now gain a midi-heli missile attack with 10 pierce and 1 damage towards every balloon, but it will do 3 layers of damage toward mob class balloons. Meanwhile, Comanche defense enhances the missile. It will now do 3 layers of damage towards every balloon and 5 layers towards mob class balloons per every missile, and it can hit up to 30 balloons instead of 10. So since I have a lot of time with the footage to keep rolling, I'm going to tell you my thoughts on it. So, Bomb Have Heli has been struggling throughout the meta for a long time. Well, except the beginning point, because Alchemist used to affect, well, the mini Comanches. But for Bomb Have, Mob Shove used to be more expensive. Comanche defense was just overall terrible because it was unreliable and more expensive. Now it's somewhat more reliable, but not fully. And for a little bit of a damage exchange when the mini Comanches don't pop on the screen, it's pretty nice. But it'd also be nice if Comanche defense, like I said in my other video from my main channel, Tabor Bros, it would be cool if the Comanche Commander has more pierce and would be slightly cheaper as a change. Next up is the More Monkey, and only 2 upgrades that only got buffed, which is Burning Stuff and Blue Incineration, but there's a lot of changes to go through. So the first up is the Burning Stuff DOT duration has been increased from 3 seconds to 3.75 seconds, so roughly about 20% longer, and also I think it applies to Blue Incineration, because it's DOT, obviously. This is all coming from the same crosspath, by the way. Next up is its DOT tick interval has been reduced from 1.5 seconds to 1.25 seconds. So it will do more damage in general. So instead of doing damage in 1.5 seconds, it will now do damage per tick in 1.25 seconds. This also applies to its Monkey Knowledge tick interval increase, where with the Monkey Knowledge on, it goes down to 0.5 seconds. But with the buff, it will now go down all the way to 0.25 seconds. That means it now does double the amount of damage compared to last update if you have the Monkey Knowledge on. As you can see in the background, it could basically take out half of round 98. Blue Incineration also got the same kind of buff as Burning Stuff as well, but unlike Burning Stuff, instead of going from 1.5 seconds per tick per damage to 1.25 seconds as a buff, instead Blue Incineration was 1 second per tick, it now does 0.75 seconds per tick towards any balloon that gets affected by its DOT effect. That they will now take 25% more damage than last update. Next up is the Dartling Gunner, and the next upgrade we're going to be talking about is Buckshot. So Buckshot has been the upgrade that has always been attacking the slowest out of any other upgrade in the game. So previously it used to able to attack in every 1.8 seconds, now it will attack in every 1.5 seconds. And the crazy thing about this change is that this also applies to its tier 4 and tier 5. Well, you won't believe me, then I will show you. Ray of Doom will now do 25 layers of damage to every single balloon in the game, not only mob class balloons anymore. Its mob damage is the same as before, but it will do the same amount of damage towards every other balloon that is not a mob class balloon, the same amount. And its shock DOT damage has been increased from 15 layers per tick to 20 layers per tick as well. The only way I can show the DOT come into play is that the mobs from the ZMGs don't make it the second bend anymore. Next up is the Wizard Monkey, and the upgrade we're going to be talking about that got changed in this update quite a bit is Summon Phoenix. Summon Phoenix has been a very lackluster Wizard Monkey upgrade for a very long time now, and, well, up to this point. So the buffs it got is that its cooldown has been reduced from 60 seconds per ability cooldown to 45 seconds. Before it was like it had a 40-second cooldown between activating abilities, now it would have a 25-second cooldown between activating abilities, which means you can get away with almost 2 Phoenixes per ability instead of going for 3. And also it got other changes like it will now do 5 layers of damage per shot instead of 4, which makes the ability more viable at single target damage. And then its PS got increased from 6 to 10, so it's actually now a pretty solid mid-game choice, as long as you're getting 2 Summon Phoenixes, because one's not going to solo on its own, hence why it's so cheap in the first place. It finally got the damage output it needs, but it just needs more projectile speed so it can stop whiffing, because you know, the main purpose of Phoenix is to, well, hit every balloon on screen. Wizzle Phoenix gets the same ability cooldown buff because before Wizzle Phoenix was 50 seconds instead of 60, but since Summon Phoenix is going down to 45, so is Wizzle Phoenix because it's a tier 5. It'll be a downgrade if the cooldown was longer. Wizzle Phoenix's flaming ball projectiles, you know, the fireballs that come out in a volley around the bird, the more darker one, yeah, now travel from 180 to 250 distance, I'm assuming, or range. So they can actually, you know, hit balloons further out than before, because before they expire. And also they're like the main source of Wizzle Phoenix's DPS as well. So it's a little nice how they now can hit balloons a little bit further out than before. Next up with the Wizard Monkey, we have Prince of Darkness, or Necromancer. Well, it shows as XXX5, even though it says Necromancer, even though it's Prince of Darkness. They changed its bonus grave, and it's basically a nerf. And the nerf is, I will show you in the video, it's quite simple to showcase it, but it's kind of hard to explain it. So, you know, when Prince of Darkness got buffed in 21.0, well, you gotta check out the patch notes. Prince of Darkness got an additional buff after round 81, where it will create more graveyard count because there's less balloons. So, it ends up getting, because since there's less balloons in the late game, each pop will increase the graveyard count further. So, they decreased the increase, where before it went from 7 to 13 increase, now it goes from 7 to 10. So you only get like, I assume 10 pops, or 7 graveyard count from popping a balloon instead of 13, which is I assume where I'm getting this from. Next up we have the Super Monkey, and the first time we're going to be covering up is the True Sun God. Okay, that was cringy. Anyway, so it says, Sun Temple Military Sacrifice Total Projectile Size Increase formula has been reworked to give an overall reduction in size for the sake of visual clarity. So the easy explanation is that they basically reduced the projectile size in version 28.0, which is what I'm trying to say is that the military effect, which increases the projectile size, isn't as effective as it was before, just to prevent lag. So basically it doesn't lag the game as much. There's your answer. Next up is Dark Knight, and this is a nerf towards it for the first time. So its Fortified Lead / Normal Ceramic and Fortified Ceramic slowdown has been reduced from 100% down to 90%. So basically it would no longer knock back ceramics, but rather slow them down tremendously. But Dark Champion's knockback remains at 100%. Next up is the Ninja Monkey, and the towel we'll talk about is Master Bomber. So Master Bomber basically just got a double damage buff for its Flash Bomb attack. Instead of doing 5 layers per Flash Bomb explosion, it will now do 10 layers per Flash Bomb explosion. So that means if you give it 20 Shinobis, the Flash Bombs can actually do quite a bit of damage towards the balloons, instead of just being the Sticky Bomb doing all the damage and the Flash Bomb as the stunning, which is pretty cool. Next up is the Alchemist, and it's the Acidic Mixture Dip upgrade. So I'm going to say it pretty quickly, but there's going to be a massive description and reasons why they removed this kind of feature combination. It's because, well, it doesn't do anything. But unlike Berserker Brew gives the Glue Gunner more pierce, range, and attack speed. As you can see, it still works. but the mixture dip doesn't anymore, because mixture dip gives extra damage, and damage buffs do not work on glue gunners, and corrosive glue does not benefit from damage buffs except debuff towers. Next up is the Druid, and the upgrade that got buffed is Hard Thorns, and Hard Thorns can now pop lead balloons alone without Heart of Thunder, the upgrade after. And I see the reason why they did this is because Avatar Wrath has absolutely no reason to go for Heart of Thunder over Thorn Swarm, which is more damage, more projectiles, and Heart of Thunder is just more pierce. And so they decided to give it, well, Lead Pollen Power as an optional crosspath, because since you do have to spend a lot of money on just so you can give it Lead Pollen Power with MIB. So I think this is a pretty good change. I know this one's a 28.2 change, which was a second bug fix after the update, but in that bug fix update, Hardthorns can now let Spirit of the Forest pop lead balloons, so you don't have to spend so much money on just a MIB. So you save so much money, and the crazy thing about Spirit of the Forest is that this is the first crosspath buff that Spirit of the Forest has ever had for the brambles on the track, because usually they don't do anything even before the change. Next up is Druid of the Storm, the tier 3 top half Druid upgrade. This upgrade has been pretty lackluster for like chimps and basically getting any use, even though it's got like 2 monkey knowledge points for top path, just so it can actually do something, but in reality it doesn't. So the buffs they gave it is that its minimum blowback distance means like how far can the balloons get blown back from. The minimal blowback distance for the balloons was 33 before, now they increased it to 100, so they'll be much further back. But they decreased the maximum blowback distance from 300 to 200 distance, just so it's not like too broken, I guess, but also make it less RNG. And then finally, the Druid of the Storm tornado radius has been increased from 13 radius to 16 radius, so it can hit more balloons instead of just relying on straightaways because of how small the tornado used to be. Next up is Superstorm, and I definitely expected it to get a price buff at some point. It's because it was starting to feel a little too expensive as time went on. And yeah, before it was $90,000, now it's an $80,000 upgrade. And it's cool because it means before there was like a big gap between the $60,000 upgrades and the $90,000 upgrades, and Superstorm used to be one of them, and now it's got a price buff, and now it gives a little bit more variety around that price region. Next up is Druid of the Jungle, the tier 3 Millpath Druid upgrade. And before, it used to just be an upgrade where it just targets the strongest balloon and insta-kill it, slowly at a time. And the problem is that if the Druid or any other tower hits that balloon, it's only going to take out one of the balloon's children, which means it's not going to insta-kill the whole balloon, instead of, you know, taking them all out in one shot. And now, it can actually, you know, do more damage, and spawn a vine on the track that will do 1 damage, 30 pierce, and finally its pierce gets refreshed in every 0.3 seconds, which means it will keep tacking the same balloon if they're still in that portion of the track. And yeah, it still targets the strongest balloon, but it leaves the vine on the track to actually, you know, clean up a little bit more. And it does way better on weaker balloons because it spawns more with the same power level. Jungle's Bounty also further enhances Druid of the Jungle's vine attacks by doing double the amount of damage by spawning 2 vines on the track instead of 1. It may not be as efficient as getting 2 Druid of the Jungles, but you can farm with Jungle's Bounties while they can now defend on their own with their new attacks. But they did nerf the money output from the Jungle's Bounty if they're in range with a lot of banana farms by decreasing the cooldown by 50%. Before it used to be 40 seconds per ability use, now it's 60 seconds per ability use. But they did increase the money output per ability from $200 to $240, but it's not enough to make up the 50% longer cooldowns. And also each banana farm will now give an additional $20 per banana farm. Instead of just giving $100, you now get $120 for each banana farm in range of Jungle's Bounty. Next up is the banana farm, and the first upgrade we're going to go through is the Easy Collect upgrade, the tier 1 bomb path upgrade. And before, it used to just be the upgrade where you can just collect bananas more easier, but in reality it's kind of useless, or basically is useless, where you can just collect it on top of the banana farm in general without the upgrade. It will now salvage 50% of the money if it's uncollected. And this used to be Banana Salvage's main purpose, by the way. And now Banana Salvage's new purpose is that if the bananas are uncollected, instead of giving you 50% of the money that hasn't been collected, it will now give you 85% of the money back instead of 50%. And also will make your banana farm have 10% more sellback, which means it may not be as effective on its own, but if you cross-path it with Banana Central or Monkeynomics, it will have way more sellback than the opposing cross-path. Next up is Monkey Wall Street, and before it used to just be a banana farm that cost over $60,000 as an upgrade alone, to give you an additional $4,000 at the end of each round, and now will give you an additional 10 lives at the end of each round, and this is without monkey knowledge, so it's another life creating option. I forgot to do a test on this one, but the 032 Monkey Bank with Banana Salvage Crosspath, when they'll auto-collect at the end of the round, it fills with no delay. So before there was delay, which I'm assuming is if you go out the game and go back in, it doesn't auto-collect and you have to collect yourself. Now it will auto-collect no matter what at the end of each round. Next up is the Spike Factory, and the first upgrade to go through is the 105 Prima Spike. This upgrade used to be really bad compared to 025 Prima Spike, and 025, well, still is the better crosspath in my opinion. 105 now has 90 PS instead of 80 PS, even though before that, in an older update, it used to have 70 PS and got increased to 80 PS, and now they even further increased it by another 10 PS. And now, it does about the same amount of damage, or a little bit more than 025, if no PS buffs. But with PS buffs, 025 is slightly more better, but 105 has an optional lead upgrade, in case if DDTs are more of a problem than usual, and I think this is a good change after all. Next up is another expensive tower that got another price buff, which is Super Mines this time. It did got a price buff before. It used to be $175,000 and it got price buff to $162,500. Now it's $150,000 and it's alright, nothing too special. Super Mines also got a small PS buff towards its small explosion PS from 20 PS to 30 PS for each small explosion if the balloons hit on contact to the spike balls before expiring. Now more PS, and I did do the test on it before, but I tested it completely wrong, hence why I'm not showing it now, because I did too bad on it. And I thought the PS buff was towards the base spike balls PS, not the mini explosions. Next up is Prima Expertise from the Monkey Village tower, and it got a pretty simple buff. Its ability cooldown buff has been increased further from 10% to 20%. Instead of being the same as its own tier 4 primary mentoring, it now decreases the cooldowns even further, about the same amount as Energizer, but only towards primary towers. This one's more like a bug fix, so previously Benjamin used to prioritize his ability towards paragons that are nearer to Benjamin than other towers. Now this buff does not apply to them anymore, even though it didn't even work on the paragons in the first place, like the damage buff and the delay after the ability duration has worn off. The next and last hero on this list is Azeali, and her DOT effect no longer stacks, which means if she attacks way faster than before in the last update, the DOT will do much more damage than before, but now it's no longer the case. But rather it will just reapply the duration, refreshing it. And also Azeali's mob damage has been reworked as well, so at level 8, before all the mob damage used to just go from the DOT effect, because if you give her more attack speed buffs, it would just do more damage over time. It's no longer the case now, kind of, which means her base attack now will do 20 layers of damage to mobs instead of 2, and her DOT effect will now do 30 per tick, since they no longer stack. And also her bonus mob damage gets further enhanced the more she's leveled up. By level 12, she will now do 30 damage per hit towards mob class balloons instead of 20. And when she's at level 15, her duration gets increased by 50%, which means when she's not attacking that same mob class balloon anymore, they will still get the DOT effect a little bit longer than before, which is pretty cool. A little bit of a variety for her levels to make her a little bit more interesting with her attacks. And then finally, when she gets to level 20, her on-hit mob damage attack, which means every time she hits a mob class balloon with her main attack without the DOT effect, will now do 50 layers of damage on hit towards mob class balloons instead of 30 layers of damage. And you know what's weird? Azeali's worse in 28.0 compared to 27.0 towards, well, the bad, with her main attack without the mob hex. Just like Glavelord from the last patch note update I've covered, Glavelord was worse in 27.0 compared to 26.0. I'm not saying that Glavelord got buffed in this update or anything, but yeah, it's because the DOT doesn't stack on both of them anymore, but rather do on-point damage, which means it's better for like short-term damage, but for long-term damage, it's worse. But anyways, that's just how the patch note comparison works out anyways, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you like and subscribe and see more of these in the future, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.